So I see a lot of my former teachers, Mrs. Gerstenhaber, my fourth grade teacher, Mrs. Mioli, Mrs. Kraft, and I got to tell you, I am very, very tempted to do to them what they would do to me and make them move up to the front of the class. Oh, 27 years. This is good. This is good. But I won't do that. I'm totally teasing. I'm teasing. I want to take the opportunity to thank Mrs. Urbina and Mr. Mulhern for inviting me. I am very passionate about this. So why don't we just go ahead and get started. Today what we're going to do is simply just have a conversation. And it's a conversation that, in my opinion, is one of the most important conversations that need to be had, especially at the education level. That's what this is. What this is not, and it never will be, is finger pointing. In no way, shape, or form are you ever going to hear anything come out of my mouth that's going to be suggestive as to whether or not there is any type of racism in this room. That's not what this is about. However, conversations need to be had. So today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about the hidden biases of good people and what the implications are for young men of color and boys. Good people being the operant word. As Mrs. Urbina said, my name is Eliezer Rafael Espinosa Rodriguez Rosarios Ruiz Jr. But I go by Ellie a lot. So here we go. I want to tell you a little bit about myself, but before I do that, the teacher in me wants to tell you the objectives. All right? They're going to be identifiable, they're going to be quantifiable, and they're going to be all that stuff that we need Mrs. Urbina to see when she observes us, okay? First thing is, what is implicit bias? Today we're going to talk towards having a working definition of what it is. Next, we're going to have what does implicit bias look like in the real world? It's all around us, but can we identify it? Thirdly, we're going to take a look at how implicit bias affects the perpetrator. And lastly, how does implicit bias affect the target of the bias? Although the vast majority of you already know me on a little bit of personal level, I want you to get to know me a little better. So, who am I? I was born in the Dominican Republic. Immigrated to the United States in 1989, where I had the pleasure of meeting Mrs. Gerstenhaber for the first time. She was Mrs. Lang at the time, right? You still remember? Okay. Before I moved to Ellenville, I lived in Washington Heights for a little bit, Little Dominican Republic. That's where we all go, apparently. All right? And then I moved to Ellenville of all the places, where I have lived ever since, with the exception of going away to college to pursue my education. Well, I live in Woodsboro now, but close enough. I also am a graduate of the class of 1997, where I was the president of the graduating class. Who remembers the years between 1993 and 1997 in Ellenville? Yeah, remember that? When the building was tore down? My class was the first graduating class, and I see Jessica over here, who's my classmate as well. So we remember being in the old girls' gym, which is now the Library Media Center, with dividers and hearing 3 different lessons being taught. So it was good. Good times. There we go. Education-wise, I have BA in Spanish from SUNY New Paltz, MA in Education from Missouri State. I also studied theology and pastoral ministries in Evangel University in Springfield, Missouri, and I am a certified TESOL teacher. In other words, I have no life. A little bit. I do plan on beginning my doctoral work within the next 4 years. Focus on comparative Caribbean literature with an emphasis on diasporic immigration narrative. In other words, how does the narrative change for those immigrants that are too Dominican to be American, but too American to be Dominican, and what that looks like. And, of course, the most important thing, huge fan of HGTV and Food Network. You need your house decorated? I got you. And the most important, critical piece of information I left for last. Elijah, thank you, sir. I own over 100 pairs of dress socks. That's not even a lie, guys. Like, that's for real. Like the ones I'm wearing today are not pretty because I haven't done laundry yet. I've been preparing for today, but y'all should see my stack. It's nice. It's nice. So now that you know a little bit about me, every time I do this, I really do like to get to know my audience a little bit. So the next slide, click for me, please, son. I'm going to show you two choices, all right? This is the participation time, right? We give participation grades. I'm going to grade you too. I'm going to show you two slides, and then I'm going to show you a slide, and I'm going to count to 3. When I say 3, you're going to yell out the option that you prefer. So, for example, if it's peanut butter or jelly, when I say 1, 2, 3, you yell out your choice, okay? You got it? Okay, all right, let's get crazy. Ready? Go ahead. 1, 2, 3, go. I thought so. I thought so, right? I don't think anybody's going to be like, no, I want to proctor a test. I just want to sit there and look at a kid for 4 hours. Like, oh, he does? Okay. my brother. All right, next one. Ready? 1, 2, 3. That's surprising because Santa Claus, y'all. Come on, Santa? Exactly. Next one. 1, 2, 3. But y'all don't get to sleep. Oh, man. I thought we had something in common, guys. Come on now. All right, next one. Go. 1. Okay. They didn't even wait to count. They said Mets. Any Yankee fans here? Y'all excused for today's session. Mr. Bina, take notes on that. Just kidding. All right, next one. 1. Jets. Jets. Good job. And the next one. Wait. 1, 2, 3. No. His airness? Michael Jordan? Man, I'm disappointed. Okay, so now the next slide that I'm going to show you is, for all intents and purposes, a full sentence. However, one word has been replaced with a symbol. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to count to 3, and when I say 3, you're all going to yell what the sentence is. You got it? So again, there's going to be one symbol, but the symbol does complete the sentence. When I say 3, you're going to yell as loud as you can what the sentence is. This is going to be good, y'all. Ready? Okay, go ahead. Wait. 1, 2, 3, go! Oh, guys, I love you too. Come on now. We just met. Whatever. Okay, now what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you literally 5 seconds. Before I do that, can we all agree that in this particular context, the heart is representative of love? Raise your hand if you are unable to identify the heart as such. Interesting. So the question that I now have for you is, can you please tell your partner the very first time that someone sat you down and said, when you see a heart, it means love? Come on now. The preacher in me is about to come out. No, just kidding. Can somebody please raise their hand and share with the audience the first time someone sat them down and said, when you see a heart, it is representative of love? My beautiful colleagues, that is where we're going to start our discussion today, and that is what implicit bias is having a fundamental understanding of an object based on what you know, but yet cannot pinpoint the exact time where someone taught you as such. See, I just said something right there. Got your attention? Let's do this. What is implicit bias? The next couple of slides are going to be a little bit boring, but I'll walk you through it. Because before we can talk about implicit bias, we have to give it a definition. Everything requires a working definition. When we have that working definition, not only can we construct, we can also deconstruct if necessary. And that's the purpose of today. Implicit bias refers to the attitudes or stereotypes that affect our understandings, our actions, and decisions in an unconscious manner. All of this occurs in the subconscious, kind of like we were able to identify that heart, but yet we had no idea where that definition came from. It was on the subconscious level. This, of course, according to the Kirwan Institute from Ohio State. If you guys are not familiar with their research, I strongly encourage it. Also, according to Dr. Brian Marks, who is one of the leading figures in implicit bias awareness and training, implicit bias is mental associations of certain groups with specific traits, such as stereotypes, below conscious awareness, which are often followed by subconscious prejudice, liking or disliking, and or discrimination behavior in a manner that typically benefits oneself or in one's group, and or disadvantages outgroups. Implicit bias tends to involve limited or inaccurate perceptions of others. I will gladly share the slide show with you guys if you choose to do so. All right, click on the next one, please. Let's talk about some of the few characteristics of implicit bias. The first one, and the most important one, actually it's pervasive. And whether we really want to admit it or not, the fact of the matter is that on some level, we all possess an implicit bias. It's evident in what we often say. Just recently, I was in ShopRite the other day, and I heard someone say, well, I don't hang out with women because women are just way too dramatic. And the implicit bias trainer in me wanted to go ahead and address that issue, but the fact that I can't fight told me no. Don't do that. You're not going to win. So I just walked away and figured I'd include it in my presentation. But that's an example of implicit bias because you are attributing a characteristic to an entire whole. Now, continuing on. Implicit and explicit biases are related but distinct mental constructs. In other words, they are not mutually exclusive. They actually can reinforce each other. The other one being, do not necessarily align with our declared beliefs, hence the subconscious nature of this phenomenon. We can be like, no, but wait a minute. And I'm going to use Dominicans as an example because I'm Dominican. I love Dominicans. They're just so loud. Come on, y'all can laugh. It's okay. Oh my God, I'm not going to laugh at that. This is an implicit bias training. But on the inside, you're like, yeah, it's true. I remember him when he was little. He's still loud. All right. Next one. So we generally tend to hold implicit biases that favor our own group. And in my opinion, the most important characteristic of implicit bias is that it is malleable. What does that mean? That means that implicit biases that we hold can be reversed and unlearned through a process of honesty, through a process of self-searching, through a process of painful reflection. After this meeting is over, this is the first of two that we're going to be having. I'm going to be sending you guys a test that I want you guys to take for the next session. And what I want you to do with that is keep an open mind and really think about whether or not the test that you just got done taking is an accurate reflection of something on your subconscious. I took it. Prior to becoming an implicit bias trainer, I had to go through this painful discovery, and I was in denial. I'm like, oh, no. And then I realized denial is not just a river in Egypt, for my social studies people out there. Right? You get it? No, not funny? I'm going to scratch that from future presentations. All right, I'm going to do that then. Thanks. I appreciate the feedback. All right? So, because our brains are so complex, our brains are taught to learn and unlearn certain behaviors, which makes our job as educators, especially at the elementary school level, it makes our job that much more important, because while the brain is still in its most malleable state, is when we have the potential to make the biggest impact on the lives of these young men and young women. We're not just simply going to focus on young men. It's the challenge that we as educators face. Right? How do I get this young man of color? Let's talk about young men of color for a little bit. How do I get this young man of color to develop an identity that is different from the traditional stereotypical identities of young men of color that is projected in the media on a daily basis? How? I don't have an answer. But we're working towards that together, right? How do we get them to identify with their ancestors, with their royal ancestors, with the kings in their background, with the architects, with the philosophers, with the mathematicians, with the doctors, with the kings, identify more with them than with slaves? I just said something, y'all. Come on now. Because their history does not start in 1609. But we're talking about the implicit bias of what kind of people? Good people. Because in the curriculum it is written, right? It is written that this is what we have to teach. But just what if during the brain's most malleable stages, we imprint that? You are the descendant of kings. You're the descendant of some of the most meritorious minds in our history. Look at what your civilization, what your people did. This is your history, not 1609 and on. Because when we constantly push one particular subject, this and this and this and this, the kids, the malleable brain will adapt to that which we, on a subconscious level, and well-meaning, are trying to just impart on that. Let's continue on. Black Tuesday. So before we get to this, let me ask you a question. How is it that we were able to identify that heart so quickly as a symbol of love? If nobody ever told us, how did it happen? Anybody take any guesses? Exposure. Right? Reinforcement. Exposure, exposure, exposure. Unfortunately, we live in a society where the word black has so many negative connotations to it that it is almost impossible to not develop a complex. Raise your hand if you can tell me what Black Tuesday is. Yes. Stock market crash, 1929, one of the worst history in American finance. Next one. Black Plague. What's the Black Plague? Raise your hand if you can tell me. The bubonic plague. How many people did it kill? A lot. Right? Like a lot. Like I don't know how many, but it was a lot of people, y'all. Like for real. They wouldn't have put it in history books if it wasn't a lot of people. So that's a lot. Next one. Black cat. What is a black cat a symbol of? Bad luck. Keep going. Black sheep. What is a black sheep? The one that nobody wants. Keep it going. Black magic. Bad magic, right? Oh, no. Hold on a second. You ain't passed me back in 6th grade. We're going to go talk to the black magic man because I want something bad to happen to you. Keep it going. What's a white lie? Little lie. Is it bad? It could be, right? If we want to look at it from a philosophical level. But if I go to the principal, if I go to Mr. Bean, Mr. Bean, listen, I just told a little white lie. Like, you ain't got to write me up, right? The impression is that it wasn't that bad. What else? What's a white dress? When somebody wears a white dress, is representative of? White dress versus, man, you have a black soul. You prefer the black dress? Listen, I ain't going to lie. I look good in black, but I'm just saying. I mean, I'm sure y'all notice. No? Okay. Scratch that out from the presentation next time. All right, I'm going to do that for you. But look at the juxtaposition of how colors are presented in our everyday society. White dress represents purity. How many of you guys watch Say Yes to the Dress? Come on, don't lie. Say yeah. Okay, come on. I need to see more hands, y'all. Okay, Say Yes to the Dress. Did you see the episode when that young lady wanted to wear the black dress? She loved it, right? And what did her mom say? I exclusively remember this quote because I'm like, oh, I got to use this. Her mom says, it's not a symbol of purity. Ooh. Come on, y'all. I just said something right there. It's not a symbol of purity. Keep it going. So before we get to this next slide, can we start to kind of take a look based on how we represented the heart? We're talking about overexposure. We're talking about constant bombardment of this connotations with black being bad and white being good. Do you really, can we agree that maybe, perhaps, in some way, shape, or form, our young ones are growing up with the fundamental understanding based on societal cues? Now remember, I'm not saying you guys are doing anything. Based on societal cues that they in some way, shape, or form are bad. I just need y'all to think about that. Remember, today is just about having a conversation. It's about presenting something to you that you may not have otherwise thought of. Food for thought. He who has an ear, let him hear, right? So how does implicit bias affect the target bias? What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a brief video. Please don't get scared because it's going to start really loud, okay? So brace yourselves. How many of you guys are familiar with the doll study that was conducted? Okay, it was conducted back during the time of the civil rights movement, where a child psychiatrist placed dolls with black children, and they went on to ask, yes, the black doll and the white doll. That test has been reproduced myriad times. So we're going to take a look at one of those recent reproductions. So what I'm going to ask is, I'm going to ask this young man to click for me.
Which doll is the black doll? And which one is the white doll?
That one.
Which doll is the pretty doll? Which doll is the nice doll? Which doll is the bad doll? Which doll is the nice doll? And which doll is the bad doll? And why is that doll pretty?
Because she's white and he has 2 eyes.
Which doll is the ugly doll? Why is that doll ugly?
Because he's black.
Which doll looks most like you?
Like me.
Yeah, which one looks like you?
And that one.
Okay.
That doll.
So we're talking about association. And we're talking about the overrepresentation in our culture of black versus white, the dichotomy between ugly and pretty, the dichotomy between evil and good, the dichotomy between, well, we just got done seeing pure and impure, lucky and unlucky. Out of the mouth of babes, right? Kids could be brutally honest. This was conducted in Italy in the year 2014. Not back in the 1950s or 60s. Now do we understand the absolute necessity for these conversations? Why is it that our job is so important? Pardon me, I'm going to read you a quote, and I wanted to read it right from my phone because I wanted to make sure that it was correct. So please pardon me for pulling on my technology in the middle of a presentation, but this is such a powerful quote that it needs to be stated correctly as it is written. The power that we as teachers have is to mold these minds accordingly. And when we manage to do that, we have the power to put in their mind, in their psyche, whatever it is that we want. Man, I got to tell you, well, I just recently went to a conference and this man put me onto this book and I read it. And man, it's a must read. How many of you guys have ever heard of a book called The Miseducation of the Negro? Ooh, come on now. You got to put that on your reading list. Here is the quote. And this is exactly why our job is so important. Are you ready for this? Now, I'm going to need y'all to listen, all right? If you can control a man's thinking, You do not have to worry about his action. When you determine what a man shall think, you do not have to concern yourself about what he will do. If you make a man feel that he's inferior, listen to this. If you make a man feel that he is inferior, you do not have to compel him to accept an inferior status, for he will seek it himself. I'm going to say that one more time. If you make a man feel that he is inferior, you do not have to compel him to accept an inferior status, for he will seek it himself. If you make a man think that he is justly an outcast, you do not have to order him to the back door. He will go without being told. And if there is no back door, guys, if you remember nothing, remember this last line. He will go without being told. And if there is no back door, his very nature will demand one. I just said something. Do y'all hear me? If there is no back door, his very nature will demand one. Can y'all process that? Which is why your job, not my job, at the high school level, listen, I got to tell you, hats off to elementary school teachers, some of you have taught my children, and I got to tell you, the reason that they are successful students today is because of what you instilled in them. The reason I'm successful today, and Ms. Kraft, I'm talking to you, is because of the patience you show with me. Because I was this kid. I was this kid. Is why I went into this line of work. Because if you make a man think that he is inferior, then he will act accordingly. If you don't got to tell him to go to the back of the room, you don't got to tell him to go to the back of the bus, subconsciously, they know that's where they belong. I almost said amen somebody, man. I almost got myself in trouble. Can't be saying amen in school. Come on now. Leave the preacher out for a minute. Next one. It is important to note the following, however. We all have stereotypes, and some of those stereotypes there may be a grain of truth to it. There's a kernel of truth to many stereotypes. For example, it is the case that some people possess a characteristic that is more predominant to a particular group of people than others. That's true. That's true. But the key here is not every single member of that particular group will have that characteristic. Let's take a look at Hispanic males, for example. And I use that because I will always pick on myself prior to picking on anybody else. Prior to starting this line of work, I too had an idea of what Hispanic males aged 15 through 24 were doing with their lives after high school. I'm not ashamed to tell you, I thought the majority of them were in jail. Right? Because if you teach a man to think, and you could ask Mrs. Kraft, you have my permission. The way I acted, yeah, the way I acted, I was heading there. Not gonna lie to you. Listen, we're being real today, right? We're being real. But someone, somewhere along the line, redefined my narrative. It was a teacher. It was Mrs. Cheryl Rahman, my ESL teacher, who I still keep in contact with. Redefined my narrative. Told me some words that I'm like, oh, you're not serious, are you? You really think that I can, what? You think I could, really? Can I? She made me doubt myself in the best possible way. What do I mean by that? She made me doubt that I was incapable. All right, I'm going to run that back. She made me doubt that I was incapable. See, we have to make kids doubt, but the good kind of doubt. So let's take a look at some stats, right? Let me see if this actually oh, there we go. It started working again. if you look at the screen here, and I'll move it along a little bit because I do want to honor a contractual time as a teacher. That is important to me. So I know it's important to you. Take a look at the statistics from the Department of Education and the Bureau of Justice Statistics. Okay, so the total group that were surveyed, you had 43.6% were enrolled in post-secondary education. Take a look at the African American component. Of the African Americans, males, 33.4% were enrolled in a post-secondary education. 21% was employed, 0.9% military, not employed, 34.4%. Now look at the sisters. Look at what our girls are doing, right? 44% of young ladies of African descent, 15 to 24 years of age, are studying. That's because of you. That's because some of you made them doubt themselves in the best way possible. You made them doubt their lack of intelligence, right? Which oftentimes grades tend to tell us. Grades tell us that we are not smart. That's when we come in and say, hold on a second, you are not the representation of a grade, right? You're not. You are brilliant. What is it? If you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, right? Something like that. Dr. Seuss said that? Or was it Tupac? I don't know. You're still with me. Good job. All right. Take a look at, and again, you know, we can touch back on this at our next meeting because I do want to continue on. How does implicit bias affect the target? Have you guys ever heard of Dr. Walter Gilliam? If you're not familiar with his work, please look him up. Dr. Gilliam is a child psychiatrist at Yale University, and he conducted an excellent study. And with this, I got 10 minutes left. I promise this will be the food for thought. This is what I want y'all thinking about tonight. I want you to obsess over this presentation for the next 2 weeks. I want you to be like, I need to see this brother again. We need to talk. I got questions. I want to make a change, which I know we all want to do. But Dr. Gilliam, in 2016, at a conference for pre-K educators, randomly pulled 135 candidates from the crowd. Those individuals were shown a series of videos. During the videos, Dr. Gilliam said, okay, listen, I'm going to show you guys some videos. It's going to be 4 kids, a black boy, a white boy, a black girl, and a white girl. There may or may not be behavior that is considered unruly or cantankerous, and any, there may or may not be. But when you see it, I want you to press the space button. Press the space bar. Right? We're going to see if, as a pre-K teacher, because you know how we have to supervise playgrounds, as a pre-K teacher, can you identify the signs that lead up to confrontation? Can you do that? The teacher's like, bet, let's do it. Let's go. I'm down. Great. Let's go. So you put these goggles on them, right? And the whole purpose of the experiment was to use eye tracking technology to measure the trajectory of the teacher's gaze. What do y'all think happened? The findings revealed that when told to expect trouble, white and black teachers exclusively had their gaze on the black boy. Let me ask you a question because I got 6 minutes left, y'all. Do you think it's safe to say that if you are looking for disruptive behavior and your sight is set on specific children, that you are most likely to see that troubling behavior in that child, whereas another child may be exhibiting the same behavior, but because you don't see it, you don't catch it? I just said something, y'all. Come on now. That's what the study showed. Furthermore, that same study asked the subjects to identify the child they felt required the most attention. Look at these numbers. 42% identified the black boy. 34% identified the white boy. 13 and 10% identified the white and black girls respectively. Why is this an issue? I hope the next graph I show you changes things. Look at this, guys. I'm going to look at it with you. Enrollment, 43% white, 4% two or more races, 29% Latino, 18% black or African American, and so forth and so on. The black boys of color represent 18% of the overall enrollment. Preschool, guys. Preschool. However, they represented 42% of all out-of-school suspensions. Pre-K. 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 When you're dealing with multiple out-of-school suspensions, you now are looking at 48% of the young boys of color in pre-K. They account for 18% of the population. But yet, when you're looking at multiple out-of-school suspensions, we got a 48% suspension rate. Let's go back to that study. Is it possible that on a subconscious level, because we're talking about subconscious now, on a subconscious level, we have accepted the heart being love, and we've accepted the black being unruly? I'm going to tell you a secret. I did. That's why I do this line of work, because I want to be the change that I want to see happen. I did. And we are talking transparency, you guys. I noticed that the amount of disciplining I did in my 13 years as an educator was consistently uneven. And when I read this study, the first thing that I felt conviction about was, do I do this? And sometimes you're not going to like the answer that you give yourself, but it's such an important question to ask. 48% of the suspensions, multiple suspensions, were black boys when they account for 18% of the surveyed population. Could it be that our gaze is exclusively fixed on potential problems? And could it be that potential problems are directly associated with the young boys of color? I'm going to let y'all think about that. 2 minutes left. In the 2 minutes that we have left, I want to reiterate some of the things that we covered. In no way, shape, or form is this an accusation towards anyone. Most of you have educated me. Most of you have educated my children. And it is because if you ever wonder if you made a difference, the answer is yes. Look at me. All right, Ms. Kraft, Ms. Gersten, oh, she left. Oh, she getting a referral. Ms. Mioli. You know what I mean? If you ever wonder, gee, I wonder if I changed the life of some kid in my however many, of course, you've only been teaching 3 years because you don't look a day over 20. But if you are asking yourself, did I ever make a difference in someone's life? Look at me and there's your answer. But now, take that. And for every child, treat the child, not the behavior. What do I mean by that? Oftentimes we go right to the behavior and we hurt the child in the process. I'm not saying don't write referrals. They're necessary. I'm not saying don't give ISS. They're necessary. I'm not saying don't give lunch attention. They are necessary. I will never, ever argue against that point. But why is a child acting the way he is? Next time, we're going to take a look at how this affects us on a deeper level. How this affects the children, the receiving end of this implicit bias on a different level. We're going to get deep, y'all. Thank you for your time. My name is Eliezer Rafael Espinosa Rodriguez Rosario Ruiz Jr. I will see you in 2 weeks. Thank you.